Psychology of men who stay in unhappy marriages. Some people leave at the first red flag. Others stay for 10, 20, even 30 years. No shouting, no dramatic betrayal, no obvious collapse. Just a slow, quiet distance. Two people sitting at the same table, but living in different emotional worlds. So why do people remain in marriages that no longer make them happy? Why stay when the spark is gone, the connection is thin, and the silence feels heavier than words? And here's the harder question. Is staying a sign of strength, or simply fear wearing the mask of loyalty? If you've ever looked at a couple and thought, they don't seem miserable enough to leave, but they don't seem happy either, this conversation is for you. Because unhappy does not always mean broken, and leaving does not always mean brave. There is a difference between a difficult season and a long-term emotional drought. Every marriage goes through tension, fatigue, misunderstandings. That's normal. But some relationships settle into something else. A stable dissatisfaction. Not painful enough to explode, not fulfilling enough to thrive. Why does that happen? Let's go deeper. 1. Identity becomes stronger than emotion. For many people, especially after decades, marriage is no longer just a relationship. It is identity. I am a husband. I am a wife. I am someone who keeps promises. I am not the type who quits. When identity fuses with marital status, leaving feels like self-destruction. Psychology shows that identity threats activate strong defensive reactions. The brain treats them almost like physical danger. If ending the marriage means becoming divorced, alone, or the one who failed, the emotional cost feels enormous. Even if happiness is low, identity feels stable. And stability is powerful. 2. The sunk cost mindset. 20 years, a shared mortgage, children raised together, memories built across decades. When someone has invested most of their adult life into a marriage, walking away feels like erasing history. This is called the sunk cost effect. The more we invest in something, the harder it becomes to leave, even if the future outlook is poor. Logically, the past cannot be recovered. Emotionally, it feels too valuable to abandon. So instead of asking, will the next 10 years bring fulfillment? The mind asks, how can I let go of the last 20? And that question keeps many people where they are. 3. Fear of loneliness. Loneliness is not abstract. It is Sunday mornings alone. It is no one noticing if you come home late. It is illness without immediate support. For many men over 50, this fear is significant. Research consistently shows that men often rely heavily on their spouse as their main emotional connection. Friendships may revolve around work or couples-based social life. After divorce, rebuilding social networks can be difficult. So the internal calculation becomes practical. Is emotional distance worse than total solitude? For some, the answer is no. They choose familiar companionship over uncertain isolation. 4. Children and the moral dilemma. We stay for the kids. This sentence carries weight. Some parents believe maintaining a two-parent household provides stability. They fear divorce will fracture security. But children are perceptive. They sense emotional climate. They observe tension, silence, absence of affection? If staying means modeling endurance without warmth, what lesson is being taught? On the other hand, high-conflict divorce can also destabilize children. There is no universal solution. The real question is not simply whether parents stay, but what emotional environment they create. 5. Low emotional awareness. In many generations, emotional language was limited. You worked, you provided, you endured. Happiness was not the primary goal. Stability was. So, when someone feels disconnected, they may label it as normal. They assume long-term marriage naturally becomes flat. Without emotional vocabulary, dissatisfaction remains vague, and vague problems rarely lead to decisive action. 6. Hope without change. Some couples remain because they believe things will improve. When work slows down, when stress decreases, when we retire, when the kids move out. Hope can sustain relationships. But hope without action becomes delay. If no therapy is attempted, no honest conversations initiated, no patterns examined, nothing shifts. Years pass in the belief that change is coming. Often, it doesn't. 7. Commitment as a value. Not all staying is fear. For some people, commitment is sacred. Marriage is not based solely on emotion, but on principle. Feelings rise and fall. Promises remain. From one perspective, this looks rigid. From another, it looks strong. The crucial factor is mutual effort. If both partners work, adapt, and support, even without intense passion, the marriage may remain meaningful. If only one person sacrifices while the other disengages, loyalty becomes imbalance. 8. Financial reality. Divorce can mean dividing assets, selling property, reducing retirement security, changing living standards. Especially later in life, financial risk feels intimidating. Emotional dissatisfaction may feel easier to manage than economic instability. Money is not everything, but security matters. 9. Habit and routine. After decades, shared life becomes routine. Morning rituals, shared responsibilities, familiar presence in the room. The nervous system prefers predictability. Starting over demands energy. New routines, new social roles, new identity. Many people do not leave because they are content. They stay because change feels exhausting. 10. Depression or personal crisis. Sometimes the marriage is blamed for internal emptiness. But depression, burnout, health struggles, or midlife identity shifts can reduce emotional capacity. Leaving may not solve the internal issue. Clarity matters. If personal mental health improves and dissatisfaction remains, the problem may be relational. If internal healing reduces relational distress, the issue was different. 11. Avoidance of confrontation. Ending a marriage requires difficult conversations. For conflict-avoidant personalities, initiating separation feels overwhelming. Silence becomes a strategy. Better quiet distance than explosive disruption. But avoidance accumulates emotional debt. Over time, the relationship transforms into coexistence rather than connection. 12. Different definitions of happiness. Modern culture often glorifies intense romantic fulfillment, but not everyone seeks passion. Some prioritize stability, peace, partnership, shared history. An emotionally calm marriage may look dull from outside, but feel acceptable inside. The key distinction is between peaceful neutrality and silent suffering. 13. Fear disguised as loyalty. Externally, staying looks the same whether driven by courage or fear. Internally, the difference is clear. If the decision comes from conscious acceptance, this is imperfect, but I choose it, there is stability. If the decision comes from fear of loneliness, fear of judgment, fear of change, there is quiet tension. The behavior is identical. The psychology is not. 14. The 5-year test. Imagine 5 years pass. Nothing changes. Same emotional distance, same patterns. Can you accept that life? If the thought feels calm, staying may align with your values. If it creates dread, the discomfort is structural. That question often reveals more than daily mood. 15. Age and risk tolerance. As people age, risk tolerance often decreases. In youth, identity is flexible. Starting over feels possible. Later in life, preservation becomes stronger than expansion. Security outweighs novelty. So the threshold for leaving rises. Not always because love remains, but because risk feels heavier. Staying in an unhappy marriage is not automatically weakness. Leaving is not automatically bravery. The deeper issue is awareness. Are you staying because you consciously value what remains, or because you fear what might come next? Fear builds invisible cages. Choice builds stability. From the outside, both look the same. From the inside, they feel completely different. This is the if verse, where difficult truths become clearer. Subscribe. There's so much more to explore. Thank you for watching.